Hey guys, how's it going? Happy Wednesday to all of you individually. Welcome to episode 1 of Truck Talk. It's kind of like a crappy radio show you didn't ask for. I really like this game. I don't think it really warrants a playthrough on its own because I don't think it's hugely watchable, but it is a great medium through which I can have a bit of a one-to-one with you guys when shit gets a bit real, and rather than it being me being bad at video games being the focus of the whole thing, that's just a bonus. And you get me being bad at video games while also telling you important things. It's not really a channel update kind of deal. I did go through a phase of doing channel updates far too frequently, and they usually weren't particularly informative. This is something a bit different. I'm making episode 1 because this was supposed to be a video of the 2.4 patch of Star Citizen, and I was going to show you guys. They finally put the militarized variant of the heavy transport ship I showed you in the last Star Citizen video in the game, the one I paid for years ago. Well, it's finally in, and I wanted to download it, even though it takes all day on my crappy internet connection. And I was going to show you guys what was in there and kind of talk you through it. And my position has always been, don't buy into it right now. Let me show you what's in there and kind of take the financial risk for you. I can't do a great deal of good for the world while running this channel, but one thing I can do is try and be useful from a consumer standpoint. Let's take a job from where we are now, please, actually. This isn't actually in alphabetical order, is it? We'll try it this way. Sorry, once I'm done with this, we'll we'll get back on topic. I don't really want to transport empty pallets. That doesn't really sound particularly important. I got the Scandinavia pack, and I've not really used it yet, so let's take used plastics. Important job, transporting used plastics. So we will do that. Okay, while we're going to collect some used plastics, back on topic. The thing is, I understand, and I don't have any delusions of grandeur. I by no means consider myself a tastemaker. I don't have that many viewers. I wouldn't expect a great many of you to actually take any of my opinions particularly seriously anyway. We're all our own people, and we've all got our own preferences, and yeah, screw you, society. But I do still consider it kind of a responsibility in exchange for your spending a little bit of your free time watching the stuff I make, to not screw you guys over and not mislead you. So I'll never go through the usual, hey guys, like, comment and subscribe. You get enough of that bullshit everywhere else. And I've always said I'll never outright tell you to buy anything, because there's no guarantee that you'll like it anyway. I can't speak for you. All I can do is play games that I think are fun, or in some cases are bad, in the case of Staring into the Abyss, and showcase them as they are, as I find them, with any bugs or problems that I come across. It's basically, a chance for me to share my experience a little bit. The exception, of course, is Grand Prix World, which is a game that I do love, but even if I told you to go out and buy it, you'd have a job finding it, to be honest. And the reason I make Grand Prix World videos is to share what I've learned over the years and to try and show that there is a market for such a game. I don't think I'll be particularly successful in that either, but you've got to try. So I've always kind of second-guessed myself on investing as much money as I did in Star Citizen, and I think that's fair. I think most people with a brain will question their decisions from time to time and try and find a way of quantifying whether the decisions they've made up until that point have been good or bad for them. If you spend your rent money on pizza, for example. You order a shit ton of artisan pizza for your freezer, and then you can't pay your rent. It's an extreme example, but let's just roll with it. What you'll do is you'll realise, hey, I can't pay my rent, and then you'll diagnose why that is, and try and decide whether that was a smart decision or not. I've never spent so much on Star Citizen that I've run into financial trouble. That's the first thing I should clarify. I'm not someone who, you hear these stories of people who've been divorced because they've spent thousands and thousands on the game. I'm not one of those, but I've certainly spent far and away more than I would spend on a brand new AAA game. Far, far above. And I've always questioned it because at the time I kind of got sucked in by the presentation and the hype, and I'm picking my words very carefully because I know we're a very sensitive community. I include myself in that. I do, because I'm a little bit sensitive the other way. I'm very quick to find fault with things, and I'm trying to be as impartial as I can. When controversy surrounding the Escapist article came out, I actually put a video up for Star Citizen where I tried to be as impartial as possible, and it really was a concerted effort to be impartial. The fact is that it just didn't look good for CIG. It just didn't. There was no way of, without becoming without a ludicrous level of apologism that doesn't make any sense and isn't fair to people who watch the video, there was no way to make that look better than I did. I stand by that video. And so I have to pick my words very carefully, because I need to be able to look back at this video in 6 months' time, a year's time, and stand by it and say, I did the best I could for not just, recording my own thoughts for posterity, but being as useful and fair to you guys as possible, because I subscribe to the unseen audience principle, that when you put something out into the internet, out into the world, you have no idea who it reaches. You have no idea who comes across what you've made, who encounters your thoughts online, and you can affect people without ever knowing it. And while I don't consider myself to be someone who drives taste or opinion or wields a lot of influence over people, you never do know who your videos reach, and maybe something I say could encourage someone to go out and spend money on something they're unhappy with, unless I'm careful, and that's why I try and be careful. Unlucky. So, with that kind of jabbering, inept disclaimer out of the way, what I'm trying to convey here is that I've spent time recently coming to terms with the fact that the game as pitched is starting to look like a big stretch. And I know you're probably thinking, Zero, you're an idiot. It looked like a stretch from day one. Yeah, of course it did. But you've got to understand that as impartial as I try and be, and as level-headed as I try and be, I'm not the smartest man in the world, and that's probably not escaped most of you. And Chris Roberts basically defined me as a gamer. His Wing Commander series, Freelancer, his games touched me in a very profound way, because they managed to capture that spirit of sort of sci-fi adventure, and that they offered a richness without overwhelming you with complexity. The games were deep and fun, but they weren't alienating. They weren't, X series level of nerdiness, but they kind of scratched the itch. And so when he pitched Squadron 42, which is a single-player game, that to me seemed eminently possible. And it is eminently possible. And then, the Star Citizen side of it came out, and, well, he got a lot of critical questioning at the time he announced it. And I remember seeing him at a press conference shortly after. Actually, no, it was on the day that they took crowdfunding live on their own website. And so people were saying, is this really possible? And he gave an explanation of why he considered it was possible, why, yes, it was risky, it was pretty groundbreaking, but with the right backing it could be done. The reason it suddenly feels very far away is, and again, I'm picking my words carefully, I am not a game developer. I don't understand game development. That's the usual. The problem with the Star Citizen community is they shut down debate rather than confronting difficult issues, and it's unhealthy. It's just unhealthy. I firmly believe no matter how much you disagree with someone, you should never shut them up. And you know, I'll never try and influence you from a commercial standpoint, but I will try and encourage people to be better people. And nothing gets better in an echo chamber. If there's anything I ever say you listen to, please make it that. The most dangerous place in the world to be is a room full of people who agree with you. Nothing good happens in that room. For example, if you look at the comment sections on newspapers, you can see that kind of displayed for you, because what happens is, as you scroll down, extreme views become more extreme. You'll find the racist become more racist. And that's the echo chamber effect. It kind of amplifies because people find support. It's the same in the Star Citizen community. I'm not comparing them to racists directly, but I'm comparing the echo chamber effect. Someone criticizes the game, or even just raises a question about the game, and someone shoots it down and tears them to pieces. They don't tend to do it from a very logical standpoint. The usual go-to defenses are you're trolling, or you don't understand game development. And coming from a person who probably also doesn't understand game development, I think it's a cop-out. I think you have to be able to confront problems, and it's something the community's never really been capable of doing. And so what I see now is the game being developed in a way that outwardly doesn't make a great deal of sense. We all know it's buggy and unpolished, and that kind of goes with the territory, because it is still an alpha, technically a pre-alpha, although we are years into development. And while I appreciate that it's never been done before, and I want to reiterate at this point, I in no way believe there's been financial impropriety. That's the first thing I'll say. I don't think anybody's taken money and plans to run with it. That's the first thing I should make absolutely clear. I don't think that. If it was a scam, the time to have run away with the money passed a long time ago. And if I was running a scam like that, I certainly wouldn't bother setting up 4 studios and hiring hundreds of people. You'd begin developing the game in some kind of token fashion until you'd wrung out all the money you can, and then you'd just bail. What I do think's happened is that it's been overhyped, overpromised, and it's run into technical issues that are perhaps insurmountable. Let me give you an example. The current limit on instance size, for example, is incompatible with some of the crew size advertised for some of the ships. Now, the plan is to split even larger ships into separate instances, but then you create this problem of having to keep everything in sync with each other. And at the moment, we can't even keep a single instance in sync. If you look at gameplay videos online, you'll see lots of jankiness, and the rings on the station at Port Olisar, for example. Different clients and the server can't agree on how much time has passed, so they can't agree on how far a ring has rotated, so you'll see it spin back on itself and jump around, and you know, it's not encouraging this far in, and I'm sure there's a very good reason why it's doing that and why it's not been resolved. But the big concern has really been how features have been implemented that draw revenue before core mechanics are working at a fundamental level. So I've been waiting years for the Starfarer, and I'm glad it's in the game, don't get me wrong. I was wanting to see it. I was wanting to see what I got for my money, which incidentally is something else we'll get into in a little bit. But if I'm honest, should it be in there? No, it shouldn't. The ships that are in there now should be working, which they're not. I had a 300 series ship, and for over a year, landing that ship causes it to rear up like a horse, and the front wheel is off the ground. It's like the weight distribution's all wrong. I don't know what causes it, but I've reported it several times, never been fixed. You see on my videos, actually, when I'm playing Vandal Swarm, the heads-up display and the UI is broken. Elements just don't display. I mean, that's kind of fundamental basics. Now, it can be that they work and then a patch comes out that breaks them, but your priority, from my perspective anyway, from a logical perspective, is to then fix that in an upcoming patch and get it working again. There's no point adding new features and new ships and new stuff to sell if everything you add breaks something else, because you're never going to finish the game that way. I mean, some of you will be already typing angry comments to me, I'm sure, and telling me why I'm wrong and everything, but just stop before you hit enter and think. You don't need me to tell you this. You know this in your head. This is logic. It's very, very, very simple stuff. You know, you wouldn't start building a house before the foundations were in place properly. I think that's a nice, clean, non-offensive analogy to kind of explain what I'm getting at here. Now, again, I'm not a game developer. There could be a very logical reason why they don't implement very basic features or fix things. Stuff like adding players, finding players to add to your game, you know, making sure you're on the same instance as everybody else. I don't know if it's fixed in the most recent patch, but it used to be that the backspace didn't function. So if you typed someone's name in to find them and add them to your game, and you made a spelling mistake, you just had to commit to it, and then you had to type the whole thing out again. I mean, that's really basic stuff. And to be this far in, and with this much money, it's concerning. So we'll get on now to why I'm actually making this video, and that is why am I not playing 2.4 right now? And the reason for that is that the terms of service have changed. Now, terms of service are a interesting subject straight up anyway, because they very rarely stand up in court in a lot of cases. In cases where they infringe upon national consumer law. As it stands, the new terms of service, to my knowledge, don't explicitly run against consumer law in Europe. I don't believe. But again, just like I'm not a game developer, I'm not a lawyer. But that's exactly why I didn't agree to it. A lot of people over on the forums are saying, hey, just accept it and play, it's perfectly normal. I'm going to level with you guys. And as someone who's, hundreds of euros deep in this thing now, I have absolutely no interest at all in seeing the thing fail. The last thing I want is for it to fail. But there comes a time where there's alarm bells ringing in your head and you have to sort of put your hand up and speak up, or else you are quite literally useless. You're useless to the people around you. It could be that you raise an issue and it's a storm in the teacup and it wasn't even worth mentioning, but you don't know that. And until you ask the questions and get the answers, keeping silent about it helps literally no one. It helps nobody. Now, what actually changed? It's I'm gonna try and put a link in the description of the video if you want to read through it for yourself. I imagine you don't, because it's a very dull and dry affair, but there are plenty of places online that have kind of broken down the specific changes. But a lot of people are going to tell you that this kind of TOS agreement is normal. It is not normal. It is not normal. A normal terms of service agreement will seek to limit the liability of a company. So a kind of general common thing you'll see is you will not claim damages over and above a stipulated value. So that's basically saying if you buy a $15 a month phone package and the phones go down for 2 days and it costs you your business money, you won't be able to file a claim that goes beyond reasonable a reasonable calculation of what that cost you. you can't go claiming millions and millions of dollars in the court case. And that's a very prudent and sensible thing for a company to have. What it's saying when it says that is, we accept responsibility, we stand behind our product, and if you have a problem and we do come to an arrangement, that arrangement has to be fair to both parties. And that's a perfectly reasonable thing to say. All it's doing is limiting, within reason or within law, because, in some cases the law itself defines what the maximum level of compensation for something can be. You just want to make sure that you've got that tied up in a nice little bundle. The reason the Star Citizen terms of service is not normal is that it seeks to remove all liability. From my reading of it anyway, it basically eliminates the possibility of any kind of recompense for the project failing. It's kind of cloaked in iffy language. The basic element, I suppose, is that it says if the project fails, you'll be refunded the part of your pledge that, or you can claim the part of your pledge that is considered unfulfilled. However, the problem lies in what they've changed in regard to what constitutes delivery of the product. So right now, the Starfarer that we were talking about earlier has a number of bugs. It's very, very unpolished. The most prominent one, the one that's easiest to see for yourself, is an issue with the cockpit canopy glass, where the reflection from the lighting within the ship is so bright that you can't see out. And to me, that makes the ship non-functional in certain capacity. If you can't see where you're going, can't see where you're shooting, then that to me is not functional. However, under the terms of service, the fact that this ship is now in the game, as broken and problematic as elements of it are, it's considered delivered. So if the project was to collapse for any reason, and you, like me, were a Star Citizen, Starfarer Gemini backer, you would not get anything back for that ship because it's considered to be delivered. That's at least my understanding. I'm perfectly open to correction, but as it stands, that's how I understand it. Now, it could very well be that that isn't the case, but as we talked about a few minutes ago, if you have doubt, if you have a question, the worst thing you can do is just agree to something. And by driving that. And how you agree to the new terms of service is downloading and playing the new patch. It's required for you to play. So basically, I haven't downloaded and played the new patch because I can't, until I understand it better, I can't agree to those terms of service. But what it sounds like is they are removing any responsibility to deliver and any liability for non-delivery. The other thing, of course, is that they've changed all reference of CIG, Cloud Imperium Games, to Roberts Space Industries. And I don't yet understand the significance of that, because to my knowledge, RSI was, at least initially, a fictional company. And then it kind of phased in as some kind of company, but I don't really know what they were doing. But it wasn't RSI that was developing the game. It was CIG. And I don't know why our terms of service now discuss our relationship with RSI. And it concerns me. I'll be perfectly frank. It does concern me because while I appreciate that I gave money in at least the Kickstarter phase, this is something that the community itself can't really agree on. The idea that you give money over with no expectation for anything in return. I don't subscribe to that. That's complete nonsense. You wouldn't give the money if you didn't expect to get something back for it. You do so with the understanding that there's an outside chance that the project may fail, but there is an expectation. No one can deny that. No one can honestly tell you that they gave $200 over and didn't expect anything in return. That is bollocks. It's bollocks. You try asking somebody for $200 with no guarantee of receiving anything in return, and you'll be quite rightly told to piss off. That's the long and short of it. people did have an expectation, and the expectation was that the game would be delivered on time and as specified. This isn't the first terms of service change. Initially, there was a stipulation that if the game was not delivered within 18 months of deadline, you could contact them pertaining to a refund, and there was a mention of a full accounting of how the money had been spent. That then changed to offering a full order if the project collapsed, and removed the deadline regarding refunds. Oh no, they extended the deadline. So anyone due a refund who downloaded the patch that came out at that time had forfeited the refund that previously they were entitled to. Now, all promise of an audit has been removed. At least from what I've read. I may have missed something. Again, disclaimer. I don't have time to pore over this endlessly. All I'm trying to convey is that from what I was able to grasp, it doesn't look particularly consumer friendly. Anyway, back on topic. Why is an audit important? A lot of people say they don't owe you an audit, it's a private company, they don't have to tell you anything. No, you're right, it's a private company, they don't have to tell us anything at all. But they previously did offer to provide an audit, and the fact that they've suddenly reneged on that promise tells me that there's something that would show up in an audit that doesn't look good. I can't think of another reason why you would remove that. It would either draw doubt over the project, which, to be fair, is already there. It's already there. A good number of people have doubts around the project right now. Or it will reveal... I wouldn't say I don't expect anybody will have stolen money or ciphered it off. What I think it will show is inefficiency. I think it will show a large level of inefficiency. It's no secret that elements of the game have been reworked, but here's the thing. If it's no secret that large elements of the game have been reworked, if it's no secret that the game's had a difficult birth, then surely we should all expect to see that reflected in a financial report. So, for a company that claims to have no investors, although I suspect that isn't the case, actually, let's get that straight, let's fact check ourselves there. They've never said they don't have investors. They talked initially in 2012, they talked about having received 1 million from private investors and that more was on the way. And then this kind of haziness appeared where CIG have neither confirmed nor denied ever that they turned down investor money. It was implied that they wouldn't take any investor money, but it's never been specifically explained that way. But the point is that they've already got the money, and backers seem to still be quite willing to hand over large sums of money, so surely being honest with them... I mean, the worst case scenario, maybe there's not enough money to finish the project, but you know what? I think if they were straight up and honest about it, the community would rally round and fund it. I mean, I personally wouldn't, but there's plenty of people who would, rightly or wrongly. So I think it's unfair to the balance of the relationship. And while letter of the law, yes, they are not obligated to give you this kind of stuff, I just think it's good practice. It's just good practice. I don't think any person or company should receive $115 million in advance payments. Call it donations all you want, it wasn't. It was advance payments. You basically chose the level at which you wanted to purchase the game, or the assets from the game. You're buying assets piecemeal, I suppose. But the fact is, you were spending that money to get the game. And the fact that VAT is applied to your pledges, to me, reflects that they're not donations. That VAT is a sales tax. You know, you pay VAT on the purchase of goods and services. You don't pay VAT on donations. And with that in mind, considering, you know, you're pre-ordering stuff, you're pre-ordering ships, you're pre-ordering the game, and I'm going to keep repeating myself because people will say, well, no, you're giving a pledge and the ship is the reward. Bollocks. Bollocks. You're pledging at that level because the ship is the reward, ergo you're purchasing the ship. So with that defined, you've given 115 plus million, or whatever the number is now, over in advance, based on a certain understanding, based on an understanding that this is how it's going to happen, this is how we're going to deal with you, and these are your rights. These are the terms of service that you agreed to at the time you gave the money. Now, it is common for companies to change the terms of service, this is true. But the difference is, let's take Blizzard as an example, right? Blizzard do change their terms of service. All companies do, to reflect a changing reality. However, they generally work on a premise where whatever they've sold you, they've produced from their own money. They get investment, or they invest their own money in developing a game, and then they give you access to it either through selling a single fee license or through a subscription model. And you purchase it and you enjoy it and you have fun with it. And if later down the road something changes, then you have every right to cancel your subscription, and you've not really lost anything, right? Because you paid your $15 and you've got a month's worth of play, and then if next month they change it to something you don't like, then you cancel, and bada boom, you are no longer paying for a service that is letting you down. The reason the Star Citizen issue is a problem is that the goalposts have been changed between them taking your money and before the product has been delivered. And it's changed in a way that removes their responsibility to deliver that product. And if that doesn't concern you, I think you really do have to ask yourself why. As I've said repeatedly, I'm not above the notion that there's a perfectly logical explanation behind this, and there's no reason at all to freak out. And that could very well be the case. Maybe there is a perfectly reasonable explanation, maybe these new powers will never actually be used, that's fine, but that's not the point. The point is, they should not be producing terms of service that absolve them from delivering what they promised before anything worthwhile has actually been delivered. Because what is there now doesn't represent even 10% of what we should be expecting. I mean, the level of polish is frankly poor. It's kind of hard to find words, to be honest with you. There are many, many issues. And it's not that the project is beyond redemption. It's not that it's guaranteed to fail. And it's not that the project is a con or a scam. But they wield a lot of money with very little accountability, and now they're removing that accountability. And what do we get from that? We don't even get an explanation. And to me, that is troubling. It's very, very troubling. I'm perfectly aware that the game could have failed. Right? It could have failed, and everything could be wrong, and then I wouldn't get a refund. The mistake people make is assuming people who raise concerns like this are seeking a refund. I don't want a refund, I want the game. And I want the speed, apparently. However, I'm not happy for those things to happen, and for the money to be gone, and for no explanation as to where it went to be given. Because then nobody learns anything. Nobody learns anything from that mistake. You know, there's been a lot of very dodgy behaviour from CIG recently, and that's why the TOS kind of pushed me over the edge. We had the issue with them applying derogatory and offensive labels to customers that they weren't aware the customers could see. People being labelled things as special snowflake, or high maintenance, or goon. People being tagged with their off-site handles. So, you know, I didn't check my account, but it could very well be that if I log in to I can't log in anymore, because guess what? They took the customer service ticketing system offline, apparently to upgrade it, but that to me seems a very happy convenience. A very happy coincidence, sorry. But it's very possible that if I logged in, I could have seen that they'd renamed my handle to Definitely Zero, or Call Me Zero. And you might think, well, what's so bad about that? What's bad about that is it means they are monitoring off-site activity. People who are critical of the game, or people who are streaming it, they are watching you. We already know they read your personal messages sent through the website. They have been caught quite recently stealing art assets. They scrubbed the watermark off some stock images, and it just keeps going on and on. They pulled out of E3, I think a week or two before they were due to appear. Now, we don't know the terms of their agreement to appear. It could have just been a simple verbal contract, but the point is it doesn't look good, especially when the single-player game is supposed to be out in 6 months. And guess what? It appears to be nowhere near finished, based on what we can see from what they do let us play. And if the game is actually much more playable and in a much better condition, then surely elements of that should be on display in the Persistent Universe, the baby PU. It seems very odd to me that they would put together a very polished single-player game and not utilize any of that technology they've already developed on the stuff that is there to basically show people what to expect. Seems very odd. So, assuming, taking for granted, that the game is not actually going to come out this year, and that could be part of the reason why they didn't go to E3, because they had nothing to show. Where's the announcement? All those things I've just talked to you about, there has been no official announcement from CIG. This is the problem. They've changed the terms of service to remove them all responsibility, and then they say nothing. They don't warn you in advance that it's changing. They don't... Sorry, hold on. They don't respond to people's critique. You know, the forums had a fairly lively thread. Last time I saw it was locked, so the mods are taking the heat on their behalf. And what happens is the people who raise these questions and these concerns get dogpiled by the community, and CIG never has to answer the difficult questions. That's not a healthy environment for developing the game. I really don't think it is. So all this stuff is happening, and they don't say anything. And that, again, sets off an alarm bell in my mind. It's blatantly obvious, I think, that the game's not coming out in 2016, so why has it not been announced that it's not coming out in 2016? Presumably they think it will have a negative impact, and yes, it will, but it will have a much less negative impact than keeping the facade up until the very last minute and then pulling it away. We remember Star Marine. Star Marine looked very, very promising. It was actually developed by IllFonic, and it was cancelled. Now, CIG told us it hasn't been cancelled. It was always intended to just be part of the Persistent Universe, and it's in there now. You can do first-person shooting. But I am sorry. What IllFonic were showing, what they were showing themselves, is nothing like what we have. Nothing like it. And I don't know if it was cancelled because it wasn't possible to integrate it, or what the reason was, but the point is, Star Marine looked a lot more polished and a lot more impressive than anything CIG had put together up until that point. And a cynic would say they cancelled it because it made them look bad. That's your money they spent developing that, by the way. You know, we can't just give them a free pass. It could be that everything is fine. Maybe there is no problem and it just... game development is difficult. But it doesn't look good. And they don't answer it. They don't confront the fact that it doesn't look good. They don't answer their own community. They take your money and then they change the rules and they don't explain themselves. And that to me is it's the biggest sin a crowd-funded company could make. And I have no idea why people are still giving them money on the level that they are. Anyway, hopefully that wasn't too ranty. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about all this. So please do share your thoughts below. intersperse it in amongst all the personal abuse that I'm about to receive, no doubt. Just a heads up, though, if you were thinking of leaving something very angry and, bashing your head on the keyboard to teach me a lesson, I just sort of, I don't care. I mean, people's opinions do matter to me, but I don't do politics, and I just have no time for it. I don't troll myself. I don't post this video to be particularly provocative. I do it because the question needs to be asked. And if you search Star Citizen on YouTube, it's surprising the ratio of positive videos to ones that ask any meaningful questions. This is why I've never monetized my content, and it's why I've never ever given out my Star Citizen referral code, and why I explicitly disclaim all my Star Citizen videos by saying don't give money right now. Because it's a very common thing around the RSA forums to say who benefits if Star Citizen fails, making it out that people who criticise it somehow stand to gain financially. I don't understand how that would work, really. To my knowledge, the arch nemesis of Star Citizen, Derek Smart, I don't believe his blog is monetized. His Twitter doesn't have very many followers at all. I don't think he's gained anything worth having, actually, by doing what he's done. I think he's done it unprofessionally, and I think he can be kind of a dick, but the guy's got the right to ask the question, and I don't think anybody wins if the game fails. I don't think there's anybody that petty out there that wants to see it fail just to see it fail. Not sincerely. I think the biggest question is who stands to benefit by keeping this up, and the answer is RSI, because they keep selling pledge ships, and the contingent of YouTubers and streamers who purport to cover Star Citizen but never talk about the issues or gloss over the issues. There was a very promising podcast that I won't name drop because I don't want to get into any beef. I just don't have time for it. If you want to get into beef, you're welcome to have a pop, but you won't get a response. It was a very promising podcast. I thought it was very well put together, but they touched on the terms of service change and basically dismissed it out of hand and didn't discuss it in any meaningful way. That's a problem to me because they are profiting, right? You're watching their videos. You may be subscribing to them on Twitch. They're getting money from you. And they are not doing their job. If your job is to sit at home playing video games all day, that is the best job in the world to have. And the least you can do, the very least you can do, is not sell out. Because it's your backers, it's your audience that make your channel worth brand deals, worth the subscription fee. That was the wrong word. Worth the advertising fees that you get. To sit there and just consistently talk about this game as if everything's set in stone, it's all going to come, it's all going to be so brilliant, is a dereliction of duty that I fear if anything does happen to the game, and I really hope it doesn't, but if anything does go wrong, I think a lot of channels, a lot of promising content creators are going to be bitten quite badly by it. And whether they're knowingly ignoring issues and glossing over them because they want to continue to get access to the PTU so they can get their videos up first, I don't know. But people do not respond well to treachery. And whether it's with malice and forethought, or if it's purely accidental, or if it's just negligence, people don't react well to it. And if I was a Star Citizen, a primary Star Citizen channel, I'd be very, very wary about what I say and do right now, and I would certainly not be referring people to the game. Anyway, I've waffled quite long enough about that, so let's move on to something else on Truck Talk. I just want to take a moment to shout out to Iceland for yesterday's fantastic draw with Portugal. I'm not a huge football watcher myself, but it was immensely satisfying to see Portugal aggressively swing in towards the Icelandic goal and for them just to park the bus and boot it into the stands every time they tried to cross it into the box. That was immensely satisfying to me, and anything that upsets Cristiano Ronaldo is fine by me. So congratulations, Iceland. I love you. It's a beautiful country. If you've never been, definitely consider it. It's a phenomenal place. The people are fantastic. The landscape and the whole aura of the place is just phenomenal. I had an amazing time there, and I've got a lot of love for the place, and even more so now the football team has done that. I think it's been quite an interesting tournament so far. I think there's been a few surprises. I've actually put a €2.50 bet on Wales to win their group. I put that on last week, and at the moment it's looking like it might come good. So best of luck to Wales as well, and England of course. Unfortunately Scotland didn't qualify, but Northern Ireland and Ireland as well. Always happy to see any of those do well. What else is going on? Oh yes, the EU referendum. Pleased to see that so many people decided to sign up. Again, nothing to do with me. I'm not saying that in the sense that I triggered it, because obviously I didn't, but it's just good to see people being engaged with politics. It's very important. I understand it's incredibly boring, but it is hugely important. And as I said in my my video, I firmly believe it's the youngest people who stand to gain or lose the most from this vote. So they should be the ones voting. But it tends to be the older, more mature voter. The people, really pensioners, are the most avid voters. And that means they wield a lot of power. And young people get very complacent and they think, it'll be alright, and they skip polling day to go down the pub with their friends or whatever. And that's the worst thing they can do, because if everybody does that, then it's only being decided by people who won't have to live with the consequences. I know that's a slightly horrible thing to say, but it is true. So hopefully it wasn't too irritating that I ask everyone to register to vote. You don't have to listen to me, and I'm sure that you don't, but I would like to implore you to please consider making sure you get your ass out there and vote on voting day. I don't care how you vote. I will never usually bring personal politics into the channel at all. I think it's divisive, and unnecessarily so, but I don't mind sharing with you that I'm a Remain voter. The EU has a lot of problems. I'm not going to lie about that. It has many problems, but it also does represent the future. And it has problems because it's never been done before. I mean, it's a multinational institution. It's going to have teething problems. And a lot of what's said about it comes from a position of ignorance or misunderstanding, or just a willful intolerance. And I think that's very dangerous and short-sighted. Britain is not the power it once was, and going back to the economy and the relationships that we had pre-EU is not an option, because that world doesn't exist anymore. It's moved on. The world isn't like it was in the 50s and 60s, and there's nothing we can do about that. Ultimately, I think the case is there that the EU is the best place for us to be in the long term. However, you guys need to get out there and do your own research. Please don't just take my word for it, and please question your sources. Don't take information from only one source. That's the worst thing. You need to make sure, find an article you passionately disagree with, read it, and really give it a chance. Open your mind and really give it a chance, and think, hold on, people don't like to think that they could be wrong. I'll give you an example now of when I was wrong, in the hope that it inspires you. The Scottish independence referendum. At the start of that campaign, I was very committed to maintaining the Union. It seemed to me to be a very small-minded thing to tear up the country. I didn't like that it was being led by the SNP, the Scottish National Party. It gave me subconscious connotations towards the BNP, and I always thought nationalism was kind of a negative thing. However, I did my research and I questioned things, and while it didn't have all the answers, I realised I was wrong about a lot of things. And you should never be ashamed to say you were wrong. Because committing to something, even though it's not the right decision, just out of sheer stubbornness, is damaging, and it's damaging to you. There's no reason to do it. There's nothing to be gained by pretending to be right about everything all the time. It turns out that the SNP are actually a very progressive, comparatively progressive, let's say, left of centre party. They are pro-business, but they are left of centre. They've certainly assumed the mantle of what used to be the Labour Party. I found that the Yes movement was very, very, very positive. It was very, very inclusive. The number of groups involved, Polish for Yes, English for Yes, so many. Women for Independence were very impressive throughout the entire campaign. And I began to realise that it was sort of this cynicism, this idea that, and it's very much how I feel the Leave campaign is handling it, that dreaming of something better is stupid. The world's a horrible place, it will always be a horrible place, no one's going to look after you, it's stupid to try and look after other people, you should just look after yourself. And that's not an idea I subscribe to. I think the truth lies in the middle. Yes, you can't let people take the piss out of you, but at the same time, there's nothing wrong with making the world a better place, a more inclusive place. And I changed my mind. I now do believe Scottish independence. I was never in doubt that it could work. I think anyone who tells you that Scotland's far too poor to survive is provably wrong. The idea that Scotland's subsidised is also provably incorrect. I don't know why the myth persists. I don't know who started it or why it's been maintained, but the government's own numbers show that isn't the case. They don't advertise those figures, but you can go online and find them for yourself. Basically, it comes from North Sea oil not being attributed to the Scottish account, it's attributed to a separate account. Let's go for eco-driving, since we're talking about oil. And so, I changed my stance. And it wasn't an easy thing to do, it was a journey. I have 50% of my family are Scots, 50% of them are English. I like Britain as a concept. I am, to some degree, the definition of what it is to be British. A union between countries. But the fact is that when I did the research, I realised Scotland has been unfairly treated and has been somewhat demonised while being unfairly treated. And that's not really something I could get behind. Anyway, you're not here to really listen to me waffle about that. Point is that hopefully that little story there helps you realise that it can lead you to some interesting conclusions if you just open your mind to the other side. Consider the possibilities. With that in mind, I'm going to wish you guys an amazing end to the week. I don't know when there'll be another Truck Talk, whenever there is need, but feel free to leave your thoughts, comments, personal hate down below. I will sift through it, no doubt, and I make it my mission to respond to everyone worth responding to, which so far has been 100% of you, and I'm very grateful for that. You guys take care, and I will talk to you super soon. Bye-bye.